I never considered myself the kind of person who could get caught up in someone else's mess, let alone one that would unravel my quiet, predictable life. But it all started with a backpack at the central train station. It was a Friday evening, and the station was packed as usual. I'd just finished a long week at work and was on my way to visit my sister in the suburbs. Juggling my coffee and a sandwich, I absent-mindedly grabbed my bag from the luggage rack where I'd left it, slung it over my shoulder, and headed to the platform. It wasn't until I was halfway through my train ride that I noticed something was off. The zipper on the side pocket was partially open, and my water bottle wasn't in its usual spot. I unzipped the main compartment to find, not my belongings. The contents were foreign to me: a leather-bound notebook, a set of unfamiliar keys, and a small black pouch. My heart sank as I realized what must have happened. I'd grabbed the wrong bag. Panic set in. My laptop, my wallet, my entire life was in my bag. I hoped whoever had my backpack would realize the mistake and return it. But how would they find me? There was no way of knowing who owned the bag I had either, no contact information, just that odd notebook and the pouch. I decided to open the notebook. Maybe it held some clue. The first page was a list of what appeared to be addresses and dates, handwritten in meticulous cursive. As I flipped through, I saw more notes, some written in shorthand I couldn't decipher, others containing cryptic phrases like 7:15, delivery and a meet at corner cafe, red scarf. It felt off. Like something out of a spy novel. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the black pouch. Inside was a flash drive and what looked like an old pocket watch. The watch wasn't particularly remarkable, but the flash drive piqued my interest. By the time I reached my sister's house, I was more intrigued than worried. After explaining the situation to her, we decided to see what was on the drive. Plugging it into her laptop, we found a series of encrypted files. My sister, ever the tech-savvy one, tried to open them, but couldn't. "What kind of person carries encrypted files in their backpack?" she asked, half joking. The next morning, I decided to go back to the station to see if anyone had reported a lost bag or found mine. But before I could leave, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, ***, we need to talk. Bring the bag to the fountain at Roosevelt Park at 3 p.m. Don't involve anyone else. ***, my stomach flipped. How had they gotten my number? My name wasn't on the bag, and I hadn't told anyone else about the mix-up. Against my better judgment, I decided to go. When I arrived at the park, a man in his early 30s approached me. He was dressed casually, but his demeanor was anything but relaxed. He glanced around nervously before speaking. "Do you have it?" he asked. Yes," I said, holding up the bag. "I think there's been a mistake. I grabbed this by accident." His expression softened slightly, but he still looked tense. "You didn't open it, did you?" I hesitated, and that was enough to give me away. "You opened it." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I need you to forget everything you saw. This bag wasn't meant for you, and if anyone asks, you never saw me." "What's going on?" I demanded. "Who are you? And where's my bag?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a slip of paper with an address on it. "Your bag is here. Go get it and forget this ever happened." Against my instincts, I followed the lead. The address led me to a small office building on the edge of town. Inside, a receptionist handed me my bag without a word. By the time I got home, I thought it was all over. But then strange things started happening. My email account was hacked. A car I didn't recognize parked outside my house for hours. And every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of someone following me in a crowd. It wasn't until weeks later that I learned the full story. The man at the park worked for a private courier service specializing in sensitive deliveries. The flash drive contained information on a high-profile case, and the notebook held details about the people involved. My grabbing the wrong bag had thrown a wrench into an operation much larger than anything I could have imagined. In the end, I never found out exactly what was on that drive or how deep the connections ran. All I knew was that I'd inadvertently stepped into a world I didn't belong in, and narrowly escaped with my peace of mind intact. Even now, I double-check every bag I pick up and keep my head down in public. Because sometimes, curiosity isn't just dangerous, it's a doorway to places you were never meant to go. Second story. I signed up to volunteer at the local community center for one reason: guilt. My mom had been nagging me for months about how I should give back instead of spending every weekend binge-watching TV. After one particularly heated argument, I impulsively agreed and filled out a volunteer application online. The next morning, I got a call from Karen, the center's coordinator. She sounded cheerful but desperate, explaining how they were short-staffed and needed help right away. I said yes without asking too many questions, assuming it would involve something mundane like organizing books or serving food. When I arrived at the center, an old brick building that looked like it had seen better days, Karen greeted me with a clipboard and a relieved smile. She led me through the main hall, past a group of kids drawing on a long sheet of paper, and into a smaller room where a group of teenagers sat in a circle. "This is our mentorship program," Karen explained. "You'll be working with them today." "Mentorship?" I was caught off guard. "I'm not really sure I'm qualified for that," I stammered. "Oh, don't worry," she said. "Just talk to them. Be there. They need someone who listens." The teens looked up as I entered, their expressions ranging from bored to skeptical. Karen introduced me as James, their new volunteer, and left me standing awkwardly in front of them. I fumbled through my introduction, explaining that I was here to help and that they could talk to me about anything. A boy in the back snickered, and a girl with bright purple hair rolled her eyes. Great start, I thought. The first hour was rough. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was to mock each other or complain about how pointless the program was. But then something shifted. A girl named Lena, who had been scribbling furiously in a notebook, suddenly slammed it shut and blurted, "Why does it even matter? Nothing changes anyway." Her words hung in the air. I didn't know what to say, so I asked, "What do you mean?" She glared at me, but then, to my surprise, she started talking. She told me about her struggles at home, her mom's addiction, and how she felt invisible at school. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop, and as she spoke, the others began to chime in. One by one, they shared their stories. A boy named Marcus talked about losing his brother to gun violence. Another girl, Aisha, described the pressure of being the oldest in a family of 6, having to act like a parent while still being a kid herself. I listened, completely unprepared for the weight of what they were telling me. These were things I'd only ever seen in movies or read about online. Hearing it firsthand was something else entirely. Over the next few weeks, I became a regular at the center. I started looking forward to my sessions with the teens, even though they were emotionally draining. We talked about their dreams, their fears, and the obstacles they faced. Sometimes we played games or watched movies, but the best moments were when they opened up. Lena began to trust me enough to show me her writing, poems filled with raw emotion and vivid imagery. Marcus revealed a talent for drawing and started sketching during our sessions. Aisha, who was always quiet, began to smile more and even cracked a few jokes. But it wasn't all breakthroughs and bonding. There were hard days, too, moments when they lashed out, skipped sessions, or shut down completely. I learned to navigate their moods, to not take things personally, and to celebrate the small victories. The real turning point came when the center organized a talent show to raise funds. Karen asked if I could help the teens prepare something, and to my surprise, they agreed. Lena read one of her poems, Marcus displayed his artwork, and Aisha performed a song she'd been practicing in secret. That night, as I watched them on stage, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They had poured their hearts into their performances, and the audience responded with thunderous applause. For the first time, I saw them as they truly were, resilient, talented, and full of potential. After the show, Lena pulled me aside. "Thanks for not giving up on us," she said. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to tell her how much they had taught me, how their courage and honesty had changed me in ways I never expected. But all I managed was a choked up, "Thank you." It's been a few years since that first day at the center. I still volunteer, though not as often as I'd like. Some of the teens have moved on, but I stay in touch with a few of them. Lena got a scholarship to a writing program. Marcus is studying graphic design. Aisha is working part-time and saving up for college. Looking back, I realized that I went into this thinking I was the one helping them, but they helped me just as much. They showed me the power of listening, the importance of connection, and the strength it takes to keep going in the face of adversity. Volunteering at the community center wasn't just an experience, it was a wake-up call. And I'll always be grateful for the day I decided to pick up that clipboard and step into their world. Third story. If I'm being honest, I only went to the interview because my roommate wouldn't stop nagging me about wasting my potential. I was in a slump, unemployed for 6 months, binging old sitcoms, and avoiding my parents' calls. Life felt stuck, like I was spinning my wheels in mud and couldn't find traction. When my roommate, Claire, sent me the job posting, I skimmed it with zero intention of applying. It was a customer service role at a small tech startup, a far cry from my dream of working in film production. But Claire cornered me one night with a glass of wine and a pep talk about how you have to start somewhere. So, I sent in my resume, thinking I'd never hear back. To my surprise, I got an email 2 days later inviting me for an interview. I almost didn't go. The day of the interview, I woke up with a headache and convinced myself it was a sign to skip it. But Claire, bless her relentless optimism, dragged me out of bed and drove me there herself. The office was in a nondescript building downtown. The startup vibe was obvious: open-plan desks, bin bags in the corner, and a fridge stocked with LaCroix. I was greeted by a guy named Jake, who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a Patagonia ad, complete with a puffer vest and coffee tumbler. The interview was fine. Jake asked the usual questions about my experience and why I wanted the job. I gave polite, practiced answers while internally counting down the minutes. I didn't feel a spark or connection to the company, but I managed to smile and nod my way through it. I left thinking I'd never hear from them again, which was fine by me. But then, 2 days later, I got a call offering me the position. Claire was ecstatic. "It's a sign," she said, practically jumping up and down. I didn't share her enthusiasm, but figured a paycheck was better than nothing. So, I accepted. The first week was overwhelming. The office was a whirlwind of activity, and I felt like a fish out of water. My co-workers were friendly, but seemed to speak a language I didn't understand: API integration, user flows, product pivots. I spent most of my time pretending to take notes while Googling acronyms under the table. But things changed when I met Maria. Maria was the lead designer, a no-nonsense woman in her early 30s with a sharp wit and a knack for making even the most mundane tasks sound interesting. She took me under her wing, teaching me the ropes and making me feel less like an imposter. One afternoon, while we were working on a particularly tedious spreadsheet, Maria asked, "So, what do you actually want to do?" Her question caught me off guard. No one at the office had asked me anything personal before. "I want to work in film," I admitted, feeling a little embarrassed. To my surprise, Maria didn't scoff. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. "Then why are you here?" Her bluntness stung, but it also sparked something in me. Over the next few weeks, Maria became more than a mentor, she became a friend. She pushed me to think about my goals and encouraged me to start pursuing them, even if it meant juggling them alongside my new job. One day, she invited me to a networking event for creatives. I almost said no, citing exhaustion and a mountain of work. But Maria wouldn't take no for an answer. The event was held at a small gallery, filled with people who actually worked in the film industry. I felt out of place and intimidated, but Maria introduced me to a few key people and insisted I talk about my passion for filmmaking. That's where I met Ben. Ben was a documentary filmmaker who'd been in the industry for over a decade. He listened as I nervously explained my interest in storytelling and my dream of working behind the camera. To my shock, he handed me his card and said, "Let's talk." That meeting with Ben led to an internship on his next project, a gritty, emotional documentary about urban farming initiatives in low-income neighborhoods. It was nothing like the big-budget films I'd envisioned working on, but it was real and raw, and it reignited my passion for storytelling. Balancing the internship with my job at the startup was exhausting. There were days when I thought about quitting both, overwhelmed by the pressure. But Maria's words stuck with me: you have to start somewhere. The project with Ben wrapped up 6 months later, and I was offered a freelance role with his team. Leaving the startup was bittersweet. Maria had become like family, and the job had taught me more than I ever expected. But I knew it was time to move on. Looking back, I can't believe how close I came to skipping that interview, to saying no to opportunities that felt small or inconvenient. What started as a reluctant step turned into a journey of growth, unexpected friendships, and a chance to chase my dreams. So, if you're reading this and feeling stuck, remember, sometimes the smallest decisions, like showing up to an interview you don't want, can change your life in ways you never imagined.